Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had a great time there in Wayne City, Illinois. Church of the Harvest. Hadn't been there in 20 years, so it was fun to go back. They've had several new buildings since then. Things are going good for them. So had a great time. We're coming to you every single week to look at the different things that point to how close we are to the coming of the Lord. And the rapture sign, the second coming, has tons of signs. So we try to kind of look at what's happening in Israel, because for some reason we don't get any of the information here in the States. So I know there's people watching from all over, but it went from being a little bit of information to zero information. And there's stuff happening every single day that points to the coming of the Lord. So why do we get into this? It's a non-escape theology. It's a hustle theology. As you see the finish line approaching, you run faster, not slower. I've never seen a runner in a race not know what the finish line looked like. And that's the big deal is, oh, you just want to escape. No, I want to have something that pushes me to do the will of God right before Jesus comes. Because literally, even this last week, several things happened that were so remarkable that I was like, wow, that's pointing right to the coming of the Lord. These things are flawlessly clear. They're blatant. They're exact. They're very precise about what's happening right now around Israel. So I'm actually going to read off some of them to you today, because there's so many. There's no way I can remember them all, and I hate forgetting. Like, I've been trying to talk about the B-52s coming from America for 3 weeks, and I keep forgetting. So there you go. You got it. Is America sending B-52s to the Middle East to help Israel? So let's pick up with what happened this last week. I'll start with on the top here. Benjamin Netanyahu explains why we did exactly hit Iran's nuclear plants, because everybody was like, when is Israel going to hit the nuclear plants in Iran? This is how cool Israel is. They hit one little location that produces the plastics that encase I guess it's the head of the warhead that are going to help it explode or help it tighten up. They gave a lot of examples, but there's nowhere I've been able to find exactly what that is, because it's probably classified. But everybody's messing with Israel. When are you going to hit Iran? Well, actually, they did last month and did take care of some of that stuff. Russian officials believe that NATO has gone to war with Russia. Basically with Joe Biden saying, okay, the U.S. long-distance missiles we've sent to the Ukraine, they can use them against Russia. Well, that's a deal breaker right there. In allowing them to do that, Russia thinks that NATO's gone to war with them, and along with that, Putin said, if you do that, we're going to start World War III, and we're going to use nukes. Well, guess what? We did it the next day. We did it today. This was announced yesterday, and today that was done, so it's crazy. There was a seal unearthed in the city of David from the First Temple time. Pretty cool when you start seeing artifact after artifact after artifact showing that Israel has a right to the land and was there thousands of years before anybody else. It's comical hearing people come up with, well, no, there's no Israeli tie to the land. There's a bit of evidence after bit of evidence after bit of evidence every single week. I like this. Israel won't allow Hamas to govern Gaza again. Man, Benjamin Netanyahu it's a bold stance for him to say that, but you have to say that because, yesterday, Israel woke up to 160 more rockets being fired at Israel. One of my best friends, his daughter, showed a video on Facebook. She's in Tel Aviv showing the buildings, their commercial buildings. And of course, Hezbollah doesn't warn them ahead of time. Israel, on a commercial building, warns them ahead of time. On a military site, they don't warn them ahead of time. But of course, Hezbollah hit that building where she was working, and some people in the office next to her got injured, and she did not. This shows you how crazy all of this is, with literally leading up to World War III. There's things that happen. I didn't think I'd see that. You've got Israelis intelligence chief. They visited Turkey in the midst of all this happening for ceasefire negotiation. Reports claim Hamas leadership relocated to Qatar to Turkey. Here, Hamas's headquarters and Hezbollah's headquarters went from where they were to Turkey, and Turkey's trying to take care of them. And Turkey's a member of NATO, letting terrorist organizations move their headquarters there. It's so crazy. Listen to this next one. This one's good. Pope Francis calls for Israeli investigation. In his new book, Pope Francis suggests that Israel's actions in Gaza may constitute genocide, calling for an international probe. Okay, so he's calling for an international probe against Israel when it's Hamas the things Hamas did to children, the things Hamas did to humans in October 7th is unbelievable. Notice he didn't say a thing about that. You got the Temple Mount controversy. A record number of Jews visited the Temple Mount this year, prompting increased removals and arrests by Israeli police. I was up on the Temple Mount in March, and the Jordanian police followed us everywhere we went because Jews aren't allowed to pray. But the rabbi was singing prayers and barely got away with it. And the second we got off the edge of the Temple Mount, he laid down prostrate. in praying. And now Jews are doing that even all over the Temple Mount. This guy at least waited till we got right off the Temple Mount. So a lot of things happening with that. You've got Israel and Syria's deal proposal. Israel considers supporting lifting of sanctions on Syria in exchange for cutting Hezbollah's weapons supply. So America is looking at doing some bizarre things about sanctions to pull them back so that it would be, in turn, keep Iran from shipping missiles down into Israel. That's what just absolutely is crazy. Now, this one is one that I'm doing this different today because I was so concerned about missing this. Russia deploys near Israel. Russian military established observation points near the Israeli border, heightening the tensions in the Golan Heights. You've got Russian troops positioned on the border of Israel in southwest Syria. They've opened up really 9 different viewpoints where they're watching the whole Golan. I mean, Israel has some spy sections and satellites all over the Golan as well. But for the boldness of Russia to do that, now why is that a big deal? Russia, what's next for all of our lives right after the rapture? Russia comes down on Israel. 82% of Russia is pushed back so that the heathen may know that he is God. That happens after the rapture because God physically intervenes. In this dispensation, he does not physically intervene. So, I mean, this is something that you just... I can't say loud enough how big that is, that Russia would do that. So after that, you got a whole thing about the hostages. Israel approved it. America approved it. Part of Hezbollah did, but then part of Hamas did not. So you're seeing the tension between all of those. You got a bomb cyclone slams the West Coast. High winds and flooding affect states from Washington to California. Crazy weather. Haven't talked about the asteroids as much as I want to on the EDU because there's so many other things that I think that are more important. But you got an asteroid flying by, doing a buzz by tonight. And if you go to NASA's site, it'll show you the list of the asteroids that are coming close to America too. This one's kind of wild. Sweden prepares for war. Swedish government distributes how to survive war pamphlets amid heightened regional tensions. I mean, Sweden sees the setup for war happening. You don't see the verbalization in America of this at all. But man, when you're that close to Russia, when you see the alignment of the things that Russia's doing, exactly what Hitler did. You know, Hitler would move all the troops up on the edge of Poland, on the edge of all these other nations, and everybody said, well, that's not really happening. What happened the next day? So you've got Germany as a no-go zone. Rising safety concerns lead to proposals for women-only train carriages amid migrant violence. You got chemical attacks in Italy. You had protests that escalated into violence with chemical attacks on the police by radical groups in Turin. Man, it's one thing after another. The amazing thing about all these things is the Bible said these things years ago, and you see it leading up to it right now. Absolutely flawless. So let's go to the scripture. There's many more of these that are happening that are blatant, that are radical, that are amazing, but I always go back to the Word. All these things happen, but the Word never changes. Jesus said, the group of people that see Israel made a nation and Jerusalem won back, he said, that's the generation I'm coming back for. He said, when you see these things, that's us. We've seen that in our lifetime. But then you got the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You got the fertility of the land of Israel. You got the revival of the Roman Empire. Pretty amazing that you have all of these right now in our time. It'd be one thing if these things happen over time, but we're the generation that has all of those. You have the prosperity of Israel, the blatant prosperity. Israel produces 90% of the fruit for all of Europe. I mean, that's pretty radical. You have the Temple Mount Institute ready to start having sacrifices. You have fish in the Dead Sea. You had the Dead Sea turn blood red where Sodom and Gomorrah was on the Day of Atonement. That's radical. You have foxes on the Temple Mount. You have 172 different species of predatory birds start showing up in the land. I mean, that's just radical because God calls on the fowl of the air after the Ezekiel 38 war, clean the land up. 7 years later at the Battle of Armageddon, he calls on the fowl of the air to clean the land up again. So you have them there. You have the ritual baths around the Temple Mount fill up with water. I like it that you've got animals in position, birds in position, fish in position. I mean, creation getting ready for the entrance of the King. How cool is that? That the creation's going to bow in adoration and say he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So you have many more. You have men lovers themselves. You have selfie sticks. You got sign after sign after sign after sign. The signs aren't there to scare us. Signs are there to show us we're getting closer to our destination. That's what's remarkable. I've never looked at a sign on the freeway and go, oh, I'm getting close to Dallas. No, I'm like, oh, this shows me that I'm on the right path. We are on the pathway of creation getting visited by the Creator. And that's what all these things are for, to show us how close we are. So you go on from sign after sign. My favorite sign is Aerosmith, Steven Tyler got saved. I used to pray for them in high school in the 70s. So, I mean, that's a pretty big deal when they get born again. When the boys from Boston are getting saved, you better lift up your heads. Like when the Ethiopian Jews were brought back, Israel, that was prophesied. When they came back, 18,000 were airlifted in one day. And CNN's Chuck Roberts said an exodus that eclipses the book of Exodus. Listen, when CNN goes to talking about what God's doing, you better lift up your heads. Jesus is about to come back. So we got signs, tons of signs. I always go it this way. How many signs do you need before you realize that you're living right before the coming of the Lord? But after that, you got signals. What were the signals? You had blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacle. Pretty radical to have 4 in a row. NASA calls that a tetrad. So you have something happening with Israel with these blood red moons. You had 4 in a row. The first one's on Passover. The next one was on Tabernacles. The heavens were saying, I died for you, coming again. Died for you, coming again. When's the last time you had 4 in a row on Passover and Tabernacles? 1967 when Jerusalem was won back. 1948 when Israel was made a nation. And 1492 at the Edict of Expulsion when the Jews were kicked out of Spain. God raised up Columbus to sail the ocean blue in 1492, and he found America be a safe harbor for the Jews. Then you had the Bethlehem Star. I don't think we hear about this enough, but you had Jupiter, Regulus, and Venus come together when Jesus was born. Jupiter, a king planet, Regulus, a king planet, Regal. You had all of them to come together at the birth of Jesus. The constellation was Virgo. Pretty radical. You had the guys ride by camel 500 miles from Iran and Iraq all the way down to Jerusalem, Bethlehem. Pretty crazy. So you had that happening. And that's remarkable that you had Regulus do retrograde motions. It looks like it's going backwards, but he's crowning Jupiter. Pretty wild. Then you had, when that happened this last year, you had the constellation with Leo. He's the lion of the tribe of Judah. Wow. So you got signs, you got signals. All these things pointing to, if you got into all the signals that happened in 2017, I told the Lord, I said, man, if you don't come back this year, you're missing a wonderful opportunity, because all of the eclipses all had pertinent things that were having to do exactly with Revelation 12, Revelation 13. And then you have all these weather things that I don't have time to get into with the radical weather things. Jesus said, when you see these things come to pass, lift up your heads, your redemption draws nigh, indicating he doesn't want you downtrodden, he wants you excited. So we get into all these signs because he loves you so much. He's showing you from the Word and from heavenly things that are happening now and from things happening in the earth that you're just about to see the King. So he wants you excited. All of it is he loves you so much. He wants you blessed, strengthened, and encouraged. So we look at all this stuff to push us to do the will of God. What do? Help our local church, help our local pastor. We stay engaged. We don't fit church into our life. It is our life. So the funny thing is, you're about to see the King face to face. Are you ready? Are you ready to see him? I would spend the next bit of time that we have doing the will of God, lay everything aside, get it all out of your life, push to do his bidding and his will right now and be a spokesman for him every single week. We'll come back next week and we'll see some radical things that have happened with all this. It's all pointing to those troops that are on the border of Israel right now invading, called the Ezekiel 38 war, and more of that's going to happen each week. So we're so blessed that we get to see it ahead of time. Well, have a great week. We'll see you next Wednesday. Bless you.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the edu at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.